Welcome to Vital 100, the podcast designed to take your health to the next level.
With the explosion of our health research and new ideas about how to make people's lives longer, we have the advantage of some very unique and very wonderful ways to be healthier. And yet, we have many things that we are exposed to that our ancestors never had. Hi, I'm Dr. Bob Johnson, and welcome to Vital 100 Podcast. So, yes, we do have a lot of very wonderful things which we've talked about in many of the podcasts. For example, genetic testing, ability to find what foods are good and what are not so good. And yet, we have so many challenges that our ancestors never had. The exposure to the chemicals that we have that they never had. Some of the research has shown that the chemicals in umbilical cords for babies, which is what babies are exposed to, show hundreds of chemicals that were never exposing them in years past. We have our genetics. And now we have the ability to evaluate the genetics. We've done some podcasts on genetic evaluation. Reveals a lot of very wonderful things that we can counter to make sure we're healthy. And yet, because of the exposure to toxins and exposure to many of the things that our ancestors never were exposed to, we are realizing that mutations and changes in our genetics are really very jeopardizing to our health. Our food and nutrition and inability to digest in many situations is really causing some challenges. I would say that most people who have health issues have to look at their nutrition. We have so much in the way of processed foods, and our diets are loaded with sugars and preservatives and so forth, so that all these things truly challenge our overall health and affect our ability or give us the inability to detoxify many of these things. And so many of the clients and patients that I see and talk to have a huge challenge with their inability to digest and absorb good nutrients. So those are some of the challenges with respect to nutrition that we have. Another unique challenge that is unusual for, say, the past 20 years or so is an area called electromagnetic frequencies. These are the frequencies we don't see, but that come through cell phones and come through microwaves and ways that transmit information. But what they do is they jeopardize and they severely challenge our own body's electrical systems. For those of you who don't know, we are not only physical beings, but we're electrical beings. And when we're exposed to things like cell phones and cell phone towers and all the electromagnetic frequencies, they do alter our electrical frequencies that are natural in our body. Another area that's related to this is that many years ago, our ancestors would basically be regulating their sleep and waking cycles according to when the sun rose and when the sun went down below the horizon, became dark for the night. Well, now we can have 24 hours of daytime based on so many things, all the lights and so forth, and by throwing off our circadian rhythms, it really jeopardizes health. A little bit of research I've read the other day has shown that the healthiest people are the ones who get 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night, right at the time from about 10 p.m. until the time they wake in the morning, say 6 o'clock or 7. The next healthiest group are people who reverse that, who are awake at night because of their job and sleep during the day. But the most challenged people are the ones who go back and forth, meaning they sleep sometimes at night, they're awake at sometimes at night, and their body just cannot adjust to that, and it throws off the brain, it throws off our hormone cycles, it throws off so many things in our body. So the ability to get a good, consistent night's sleep is very important. And in fact, what I tell people is I have a term for, it's called bedroom hygiene, a way to get good, deep, restful sleep, because everybody does need good sleep. And that is taking the technology out of your bedroom, having it a very dark room in the house, having it be absent of noises, and have the temperature be at about 68, 69. Not a warm temperature, but just relatively cool. So this is important too in terms of things that people didn't encounter, is that disrupted sleep patterns. The next thing that we are faced with is a lot of stresses that people never encountered decades ago or even a century ago. And these are stresses that involve our society nowadays, professional stresses, family stresses, those kind of things. Now, 100 years ago, people did encounter stresses that we don't, but they were relatively easily resolved. Nowadays, there are huge amounts of emotional, professional, intellectual stresses, and unfortunately, our healthcare system is medicating many of these people. Medications to wake up, medications to go to sleep, and this really hurts our overall health. Now that's a nice segue into another stress that our ancestors did not have to encounter, and that is one of our healthcare system, which is a pharmaceutical-based system. And what happens is every illness, every problem that people have is medicated away. And this creates some problems because in a future podcast, we're going to talk about approaches to healthcare, but it's important to only use medications when they're absolutely necessary rather than just, oh, this is a little bit of a problem, what medication can I take? I call it the drug du jour approach to health. So our ancestors didn't have to deal with all the drugs and the problems that come from drugs, the side effects, that kind of thing, that we do now. I just saw a figure, about 6 months ago, that showed that the average U.S. adult is on 5 prescription medications. Now, many people I know aren't on any, but a lot of people are on many more than that. And one of the more up-to-date topics along this line is the crisis we're experiencing with the opioids. Opioids are basically pain medications that people are given for maybe they're in a whiplash or maybe they fall from something or post-surgical and they have pain and they're just off the cuff given opioids, and within 5 to 7 days they're hooked on them. And there's over 200 deaths in the U.S. a day from opioid epidemics. So the drug crisis, which is promoted by the pharmaceuticals, is indeed a stress and, for that matter, can shorten one's life because of the side effects, is one of the things that our ancestors did not have. As I said, we have a lot of emotional and mental stresses. I think that some of the social media that people look at all the time is a very huge stress. But mental, emotional stresses are important to be able to take care of those, and we do indeed have some techniques to do that. Not medications, but we do things like the emotional freedom technique. Google EFT, emotional freedom technique, to find out how simple that is. But things like exercise, meditation, yoga, all those things are very good at mitigating these stresses that our ancestors didn't have. And finally, as we have been saying, the real problem is the use of medications. Maybe medications were very infrequently used decades ago, but now they've become just the way that people deal with just about everything as a medication. I think more and more people are starting to realize that although medications can be used for certain things, if they can avoid them, that is the best. Now, I see a patient population that we not only try to wean off of a lot of medications, but people are adamant they're not going to be on medications and want to find natural alternatives. We're going to be doing a podcast pretty soon about the different approaches to health And one of them is the natural approach to health, which really can be a way to get the body functioning correctly without major side effects of the drugs. Granted, drugs are very important every once in a while, but to have them be the treatment of choice is not always the best way to go about it. So these are some of the challenges that we face. I think the big ones are nutritional deficiencies and the toxicities we have in our lives. And toward that end with the toxicities, I do a lot of detoxification with my clients, and that involves getting the systems of detoxification, whether it's the GI system, the liver, the kidneys, the skin, that kind of thing, to be able to detoxify much more effectively. But a very important thing is to minimize your exposure to toxicity. You've got to find out where they are. They're every place, whether it's in the skincare treatments, whether it's in your foods, whether it's in what the doctor and the dentist exposed you to, or the medications. A lot of toxicity in places in the home. And so it's very important to find out where these are, and you will never eliminate toxicity exposure, but you can mitigate it so that it doesn't overwhelm your body's ability to get rid of toxins and damage your health. Now, to create health and to be able to counter some of these things that are challenging our overall health, become a student of health. Make sure you're physically exercising, making sure your foods are as natural as they can be. Take digestive enzymes. You want to make sure you get good sleep, good physical activity. And in fact, we're going to have a podcast on that particular topic of physical activity. You want to be able to learn how to deal with the big stresses in life and to minimize stress. And one of the biggest and most important things is getting a genetic test. It's so valuable and so easy now to do that, and very relatively inexpensive. And it's the only test you need in your life, really, and you only need to do it once to find out what your body's weaknesses and strengths are and to be able to avoid the weaknesses. So if you're not a good detoxifier from a genetic point of view, we can help you improve that detoxification. If you have a proclivity to heart disease because of your genetics, we can make sure that's not going to happen. So a genetic test is very valuable, and if you want to get in touch with us, we can go over that with you. I do this with a lot of my patients, and we guide them as to what they need to do and what they can't do because of their genetics. So those are some of the very basic things. We're going to go into detail about each one of those. Understand why health is so important. When you're young, you don't even think about it. As you get older and you start to experience the aches and the pains and the poor sleep and things like that, you get ill more frequently, then you appreciate it. But to be able to take advantage and to study your health and to be healthy, what to do about the challenges in our environment are important to do as soon as you can, not wait until tomorrow. Please get in touch with us if you have any questions. I do a lot of health coaching for people and get them out of major health issues. Take care, and remember to enjoy the journey.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Vital 100. Please check out our website, vital100wellness.com, for other ways to listen to our podcast, as well as additional health resources. If you have questions for Dr. Bob, or if you have feedback or recommendations for the podcast, please send an email to info@vital100wellness.com.